Hey guys, it's Scott. Hopefully you're enjoying the rest of your summer and it's cool where you are. It's not too bad. I can hear some kids at the pool in the background, so if you hear something, kids are having fun. I wanted to do a follow-up on my last video with Father Tim. And the last video was on confession. Now, one thing that I decided to do for Carpool Orthodoxy was basically I want to ask him questions, not only that I would think of asking, but also what would you perhaps ask him? And that was kind of an interesting video for me because I kept circling around, if you might have picked up on, well, Father Tim, are you saying that people who come to Orthodoxy have to give a full life confession? And I kept going around and around because from a Protestant perspective, it's sort of like, we're taught that as far as the East is from the West, your transgressions will be forgotten as well. And so that's from Psalms, a paraphrase, but it kind of gives you an idea from a Protestant perspective. We think, because we confess to ourselves and we confess to God, and if our heart is sincere, that we believe that we're forgiven. And so I remember with Father Tim, as I was going through the journey with becoming Orthodox, I asked him a question. Well, Father Tim, what about confession? He would tell me, just confess like you normally do. And so I did. I continue. And so when I became, my chrismation was basically getting ready to happen, I sent him an email like, what about confession? He goes, oh yeah, I'll stop by and we'll do your confession, which I think I mentioned was on my birthday, which, contrary to what Father Tim says, don't do it on your birthday. Don't do it on your birthday. I mean, but you don't know how it's going to turn out. Because I say that because it wasn't, for your first time, it's a new environment. You're not outside in my garden like I confess here in my house or in the privacy of a place in the middle of the night. Father Tim is to your side. Couldn't see him, but it's just a different, not that Father Tim was there was a problem, it was just a different venue and it was just a different experience. And so as you're confessing, it's not just like normal, it's just a little bit different. And so as I went through that, I just picked up like, okay, I'm going to go from where I left off in terms of my confession. So I confess rather frequently. So to me, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to pick up and go. And so if you picked up from Carpool Orthodoxy, I'm like, so you're saying you have to go back to when your childhood, a life confession, so to speak? And his response was yes. And I was like, what? But he might have said that to me. I'm not going to say he didn't, but I hope he didn't, because that would have been something I would have thought about for a while, and it probably wouldn't have been good. So anyways, but after this Carpool Orthodoxy, and again, I'm asking questions that I think you guys would want to know, and from my Protestant upbringing, what I'm thinking. So of course, James is accurate, and there's a link below. Of course it's accurate, it's in the Bible, but there's a link below from John Piper, who a man I greatly respect. He's Reformed, Protestant, he's a Baptist. I think he has a church in Minneapolis. And he received this question. And for those of you who are Protestant, there's a link below that you might want to listen to John Piper's response to that. So the days after this Carpool Orthodoxy, before my next confession, which would be my second confession as Orthodox, I kept thinking, Scott, what is the issue you have with this? Is it pride? And I'm like going through this, and to me, it really wasn't a pride issue, because I actually think I could tell if Father Tim was next to me, confess something to him, even outside the context of a confessional. I mean, I think God brought him into my life so I feel comfortable in that way. And so I'm trying to think that's not it. And I guess it boils down to, I kept thinking, well, if I already did this to God, why do I need to do it again? And it just started like, but then it goes back down as well, God doesn't mind me sharing this with someone, so maybe it is a pride issue. So, as I went through that over a couple of days, I'm struggling with this, and I finally realized that, okay, most of the sins, as Father Tim might have mentioned in Carpool Orthodoxy and confession, a lot of people repeat the sins over and over again. Not to say that they're not, accurate, but sometimes we just say our sins, but we don't kind of like change the way in which we get into the situation where we sin, and it becomes more like, okay, I did this, go on until we do it again. And to me, I'm trying to get a sense of a journey on this earth as Christians. And before I became Orthodox, I was very much a believer in the process of sanctification, in which we sin less, become holy, and become drawn closer to God. And so as I became Orthodox, I'm also coming up with the concept, or exposed to the concept of theosis, which I don't think exactly is sanctification. It's actually one in which we experience God even more closely. And I'm not prepared to really talk to you with that today, but as I went through my struggle in my mind about confession, I felt there was some spiritual battle taking place. And I was trying to discern, like, why. And I think it was part of the process to maybe become a roadblock to other areas of my life that I need to explore, to grow closer to God. And so going back to my confession, to me, it was more, okay, why don't you just be as authentic as you can? And I don't know about you, I can only speak for me, but there are things inside that are in a box. You know, even though God doesn't remember my sins from the east as from the west when I confess them in my sincerity of heart, there are things I remember what I've done. And so my perspective was to share that, and as a demonstration that it's not pride and I'm trying to keep something to myself, even though I know that God has forgiven me for it. And so again, as I go through my own journey with Orthodoxy, I want to be authentic in terms of what I experience, and hopefully sharing with you, if you have any struggles or questions, you're not alone. But there are spiritual battles that work, we know that. And so we can't ignore some of the roadblocks, some of our own personal habits that come up that might keep us from exploring and receiving more joy and blessing than we can even imagine. And so that's why I'm sharing this with you. So I'll end it on that. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you enjoy my garden. I think I might have mentioned that I spend a lot of time in the garden. I use it as my confessional, and I still use it as my confessional. So even though I go through, or will go through, a sacramented confession, I still spend my time daily or whatever in my garden praying and confessing. And it's just a place that brings me great joy, and I hope you have a place such as that brings you great joy. But let me show you a little bit of my garden. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you later on. Bye-bye.